All right, button pressing has commenced, and here we are. This is Jay Brown Yoga Talks podcast. My name is Jay Brown. If you are new here, let me welcome you. Everyone else, what's going on? I hope you had an okay week. I've got all kinds of updates for you. First and foremost, I am overjoyed to report that the fundraiser to support me in opening a yoga center reached 100% of its goal. Basically, we got to about 96%, and then a family member swooped in and put me over the top. And frankly, I consider it a small miracle that this has happened. It came out of a place of prayer, out of a deal I made with God, and the prayer was most definitely answered in the form of longtime friends and supporters coming to my aid in a moment of vulnerability, and it's really renewed a deep something in me, a deep faith in both God and humanity. So that's really pretty amazing. And in such sharp contrast to like so many other things, like if I look outside of the immediate sphere that I'm living in and to like everything else that's going on, it's just a complete shit show. But if I just look at that experience I've just had over the last month of prayer and of reaching out and of having people heed the call, it's a really wonderful thing. So thanks to everyone who contributed. And even if you didn't contribute, even if you were just listening and thinking a good thought my way, thank you. And I think I mentioned last week, I got the keys. I'm in there, and sure enough, we've run into quite a lot of speed bumps already. Some of the things that we thought were going to go smoothly haven't gone so smoothly. You know, like grouchy stuff. The front door doesn't open good. It rubs. So we need to take it down and cut the bottom. But then the blade on the saw was dead, and we got to get a new, all kinds of stuff like that. I'm mainly just trying to get like the bones of the place in order, like lighting and choosing paint colors, and even just little things like if you're going to use an extension cord to get some power to a certain place and you want to kind of run it along the molding and do like all these like little details. They're the sort of things that if you don't do them the way that you want them to be done now, if you like just do it, spluck it together really quick because you want to get in there and get it going, because there's like this feeling of, oh my God, I'm in here, let's get going. There's like this feeling of like feeling like you had to be rushed usually. But if you do that, if you just kind of spluck it on there and you say to yourself, oh, I'll fix this later, it never happens. I learned this from the last time I had a center, that if you don't do these bones of the place things the way you want them done now, you're going to just end up living with however you splucked it, like, cause in like a year or something or 2 years, you're going to like, yeah, I'm fine with the way it is. You're never going to go back and redo it, So paying attention to the details might seem a little bit frivolous in some regards. Like a lot of people walking into the place might not notice all these little details. But for me, it's not really just about the aesthetics. I mean, it certainly has something to do with that. Like when people walk in, it wants to feel a certain way. And what makes a place feel a certain way is all of the attention and love that a person puts into the details of creating that space. So I'm very conscious of that, and my wife and I are spending the necessary time to do things in the way that we're going to really feel good about. So it's very exciting, but also definitely quite a bit stressful. And again, there's like a backdrop of like political and social upheaval and all these other things. And I'm just sort of seeing if I can keep myself focused on making this space, the Birdhouse Yoga Center. So onwards and forwards, I'm excited about what's going on. And there's a little bit of a buzz already around the neighborhood. People are starting to find out about it. I had someone say to me, "Oh, Jay, are you open a yoga center?" So very encouraging. And the internet's getting installed tomorrow. I'm going to start teaching some of my online classes out of the space this week. My plan, as I think I've said, is to do a sort of soft open later this month, like open it up without really promoting it to just some people I know in the neighborhood who will come, and have some people start coming in person as we're really dialing things in and finishing the space. And then in September, I want to do a kind of grand open and have a party. So that's the plan. And really from there, it's just a matter of whether or not people are going to come, and if the neighborhood is able and willing to support it. And that really remains to be seen. And also is very much a topic of today's talk with Nadine Watton. Nadine and I were put together by a mutual friend, and we connected right away. You'll see we have so many parallels in the way that we've come into yoga and sort of the evolution of our personal yoga practice, as well as making a profession of it and having children and trying to make a living, all of the stuff that I'm often going on about in these intros and outros and in these conversations is very much all in the same wheelhouse as Nadine. And it was great fun to connect with her on not only the past and how we got to where we are, but what's happening right now and how we're looking to meet it. So super fun conversation with Nadine. Very happy to be sharing it with you today. Real quick before we get to it, I've got some announcements. First, I'm going to be starting a new group for my teacher training program in October. And I'm giving people a heads up now. More details are going to be going out soon. But if you're a listener of the show and you've thought about wanting to study with me in a more in-depth way, if you are a teacher who's looking to renew your inspiration behind your teaching, or maybe you're new to teaching and you're looking to fill out your knowledge base and you want to feel like you know what you're doing and why you're doing it more, then my teacher training program might be right for you. You can go to the website and click around and find out about it. Like I said, I'm going to be mentioning more details soon, but just putting it in your ear, new teacher training group starting in October. In the meantime, if you want to connect with me in other ways outside of listening to this show, there's plenty of opportunities for that. There's ongoing live classes. You can come see the new yoga center space as I'm painting it, because I'm going to be doing classes while I'm in the process of decorating this space. So you can get an inside glimpse from that if you want to come to some live classes. I also have a weekly discussion group if you would like to have conversations like this with me and other fellow yogis, or maybe you just want to check out my on-demand videos or get into the full-length archives of the show and become a supporter with a podcast premium subscription. All of my stuff can be found at jbrownyoga.com. Okay, y'all. I think we'll just leave it there. I will touch base with you on the other side about a few things. But for now, let's go ahead and get to it. Let's listen to this conversation that I had with Nadine Watton. Hi, Nadine.
Hey, Jay, how nice to meet you. Hello.
Nice to meet you too. A pleasure. I know we have some mutual friends, but I don't believe we've ever met before.
We have never met before. Never. It's really nice to meet you. And I love the hair. I think on your website, your pictures are all really short hair. And it looks great.
Oh, well, thanks.
Yeah.
The pictures on the website are how I looked for the majority of my adult life. This is
Okay.
a very new thing, like in the last year or 2 years, really. Basically, I just stopped cutting it. I stopped doing what I was doing, and this is what ended up being there.
Well, I think it works. It's the same with my husband with his beard. So in lockdown, he just stopped shaving. And then now it just did what it did. And now it's a very abundant, abundant
Well, I
beard.
haven't gone there yet. If I grew a beard and took off the glasses, I would look like a completely different person. It's pretty amazing how our appearances are. Let me mention, I am already recording, and if it's okay with you, I want us to consider ourselves having just begun. Is that all right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. Yeah.
Oh,
I'm
very
really
cool.
pleased I could see you as well, because I was worried in case we were just going to be audio. And I'm always much happier when I can see someone's face.
It's interesting that you mentioned that too, because in the early days of the podcast, there really was an issue that if we used video, because it was like on Skype and stuff, it was even before
Yeah.
Zoom, you didn't get as good audio. So there was like a real case to be made for not using the video, and it just wasn't as reliable. But when
Mm,
Zoom hit the scene, even before the pandemic, it did kind of change stuff. And over time, as people have used it more, some people really like the video on, and some people
mm,
don't. And my thing
mm.
is, I'm not like putting it out on YouTube as a video.
Yeah.
So I don't want people to feel like they have to like get the lighting and get dressed up. You know what I mean? We've all done like Zoom production now. And I want it to be as low key. I want people to be like be able in their pajamas with a cup of tea. I want it to be like as informal as possible. So that's why I don't start with the video. But if someone likes it, I'm happy to have it on.
Yeah, I'm happy. I'm happy. It's nice to see you.
Very
So
cool.
I have to confess, I have a big confession to make. So one of our mutual friends, being Norman Blair, who I
Yes.
think you've had on a couple of times now. So
Yes.
Norman was up seeing me. He came up to do one of my trainings, which was hilarious because it's like, Norman, I don't know what I can teach you here, mate. But anyway, please come. And also we did some fundraisers and things together. But he's like, have you heard of Jay Brown? And I said, you know what? I haven't. I'm so sorry, Jay. And then he said, oh, I'll link you up. I'll link you up. So that's obviously he connected us.
Okay.
And then so now in the last, I have been binge listening, I have to say,
Okay.
to you've been with me on my dog walks. You've been with me in the car, Jay.
I
It's
see.
also,
That explains actually like the first moments with you in this call felt very warm and like you were my friend already. That's
yeah,
probably
it's like I
because you've
know
been
you.
listening, so you kind of feel like you know me a little. That helps. Good.
Absolutely,
And
yeah.
yes, and definitely shout out to Norman. I suspicion why he would want to hook us up too, because from what I gathered, you have a somewhat light digital footprint, which I admire.
Yeah,
But what I could gather, it does seem like we've had some parallel trajectories, and I've been talking about the trajectories. So it
yeah.
seems like it makes sense that we meet. So I thank Norman as well for putting us in touch.
Yeah, yeah, and I saw Dave Charlton this week
Oh,
on
just this
Zoom.
week.
Yeah, because we usually chant together. So I saw him just this week, and his hair is also getting quite long, I have to say. So he's kind of rocking the '60s hippie look at the moment, which is
I
good.
see. I didn't know
So
that.
yeah. So I was like, I'm going to see Jay Brown this week. So anyway, so he was
Cool.
sending his regards to you as well.
And mine back to him. Dave and Ron Ju are really great guys, and that you've studied with them is pretty cool. We can talk about that some. So,
Mm.
first of all, just to kind of orient, you are in Edinburgh, is that right?
Correct. Yeah. So Edinburgh, I'm just outside. So I'm actually originally from Edinburgh, although I spent 20, I don't really sound it, I don't think. But anyway, I spent 20 years of my life in London. And then I came back with my family almost 12 years ago. We came back. So we just live in a little town outside Edinburgh, but I teach in Edinburgh. So that's like my my main place. So yeah.
Got you. And so your yoga didn't start there though, did it?
No, yoga started in London.
In London. I
Yeah,
see.
and that was now I was just listening to one of your talks with Conchetta
Okay.
Trotsky the other day, and you were both talking about like um, kind of like the early days, like the late 90s, like the early, that kind of these early days in New York when the yoga scene was starting to bubble away. And it was
Mm-hmm.
really making me feel quite nostalgic actually, because I probably started going to yoga, it was probably 1996. So
Mm-hmm.
I moved to London because I was training to dance. So I left home when I was 16, moved to London to go study and train. And then by the time I was, probably within about 6 months, I was so injured. My body just didn't cope. And then I muddled through, I just kept thinking, well, let's just keep going, let's keep going. And by the third year, I had to leave. I spent more time in the dancers remedial clinic than I did in the studio. So I just left, and then I kind of bummed around for like waiting tables and that kind of thing. I was 19, and
Mm-hmm.
that was me. And then I discovered yoga at 21. So that was like 1996. Where
Well,
I
let me
discovered
just
yoga.
interject for a second that
Yeah.
it's almost similar, except I started out in like theater world, and then I
Mm-hmm.
did do a little stuff in dance, but it was like postmodern, like contact improv kind of
Yeah.
thing, not like more
Yeah.
traditional. So I don't know what kind of dance you were doing, but there wasn't much of like a career in that.
Okay. Yeah.
And yoga did become like a way to engage with my body
Yeah.
after I wasn't in like dance training anymore.
Yeah. I think what you said there is interesting. The idea of engagement with your body.
Yeah.
Because in terms of in the dance world, um, you just punished yourself. You just, and I was doing ballet. It was
Yeah.
ballet, a lot of ballet, and it was just brutal, Jay. It was just really, really brutal. And
Yeah,
then,
because it's not about you as a person or you being well. It's just
no,
about like accomplishing the choreography with some idea of
yeah,
precision or something, right?
yeah, exactly. So I didn't. After I left college, I didn't touch anything for a couple of years. And then someone recommended I should try yoga. So I did yoga on a video. They gave me a video cassette and said, try this.
You're not the only one. There's
I
lots of people
know,
who started with a video.
I just feel a bit old now. Now I
No.
should accept that.
Was it a VHS tape or
It
was
was a
it a
VHS.
DVD?
No, it was a VHS, Jay. Come on.
Of course it was. Of course it was a VHS.
So I did that, and then I thought I'm going to try and find a class. So I just went to, there was a place in London, King's Cross, called London Contemporary Dance School. And it's still there. It's called The Place. And there was a class there, and it was called Ashtanga Yoga. Come and try this free-flowing serpentine style of yoga. So I was like, well, that sounds quite nice, actually.
Serpentine. They described it as serpentine.
Yeah, kind of like serpentine, free-flowing. I was like, very nice. So it was taught by a woman called Jean Hall. I don't even heard of Jean Hall. Jean Hall, first class, I was hooked because it was like dance, because it flowed and it moved.
Was it primary series?
Yeah, it was primary series. Yeah, it was probably, I think it was like half primary.
Okay.
But it was so funny because I thought I joined a cult because everybody knew what I was doing, what they were doing, apart from me.
I mean, some would say you did, but
depending on who you ask.
Yeah, yes.
And it was so funny because it was in a dance studio. It was all mirrored at the front, and then as when we were going through Surya Namaskara B, I was sort of one beat behind everyone else. So as people were going back down from Warrior One, I was like coming up, and all I could see was this red face, like.
Well, in fairness, it is a self-practice tradition, so you do the same thing over and over again. That's why everybody knew it.
Yeah, exactly. It was just, so I was like, wow, what is this? But I loved it. And over time, what I loved about it so much was it allowed me, like you say, to engage with my body, and it was in a much more healthy way. And it also invited me to, there was kindness. Do you know, like I'd never experienced working with my body without, I'd never experienced working with my body with kindness. before. Because with dance, it was all like, that is wrong, this is incorrect, improve that, all
I
that.
mean, it's interesting. I'm sorry to keep interjecting, but it's interesting
No, you're
you
good.
say that, because I don't know that it was my experience of Ashtanga yoga in particular in the early 90s, when it was very common for there to be pretty hard adjustments offered to people, that it was about kindness, but it does entirely depend on the teacher in my experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And
So
I
you
think
might
I
have
was
had an
really
Ashtanga
lucky.
teacher who was just super kind about everything. Is that the case? Because did that teacher study with Patabi Joys? Were they traditional, or like?
No, I mean, she wasn't certified by Patabi Joyce. She'd obviously been to Mysore, but she wasn't certified by him. And I think she wove in, I think, techniques that she'd learned from her dance, because she was also an ex-dancer as well. So she'd woven in quite a lot of that. And and she also had quite an Iyengar background. There was an Iyengar background going on with her as well, which also has the reputation of maybe not being particularly
I know, but
kind.
at least to me, like, in a way, when someone has multiple schools or styles that they've inquired into, I consider that to be a plus, because it just means they've seen different viewpoints and different perspectives on practice.
Yeah.
I think most teachers ultimately were there was some synthesis happening together through their own practice that they were offering,
Yeah. I agree completely. Yeah, absolutely.
But the Ashtanga forms certainly were awesome. I loved them too. Jump backs became my favorite thing.
And then life became too short.
Well, I think at some point it was initially about being able to accomplish the forms. Like you shared, everybody was a beat ahead of you. So at some point you wanted to be on beat. And then it's like, and Ashtanga was like, are you moving on to the next series? But for me, it was really just like wanting to be good at it. So, at some point I developed a press handstand. And so all of my sun salutations had a press handstand in them, not just a jump back. I was that guy.
Oh, Jay.
I was that guy.
You were that guy.
I was definitely that guy for a time, until it revealed itself to be a pretty hollow accomplishment. Like when the rubber met the road, and like I was having to deal with like the loss of my mom and how I felt about myself in life, being able to do that handstand was of no use to me.
Yeah. No, I totally hear you. But then you've got to, I have that question quite a lot. And I do often think, I mean, I've moved on from Ashtanga. I was a 5-day, I was never a 6-day a week.
All right. So you did, how long did you do the full 6 days except moon days, the whole thing for a while?
What did I do? Now, let's see. Hang on. 28, probably looking at, probably about 7 years. I was 5-day a week, Mysore, like practice, like 6 a.m. thing, that over the years, you have these questions like, well, what's the point? Like, why am I bending backwards in Kapotasana to try and get my heels and sobbing?
Especially if you have a lot of pain. Like I had a lot of chronic pain that came about over time,
Yeah, but then with reflection, then I think, well, it's resilience building.
Sure. Discipline and resilience. Yeah.
It is discipline and resilience, which then when I lost my mum, I was moving on from a Ashtanga practice, because I'd met Dave Charlton. So I was starting to move into the Vinyasa yoga, the Desikachar, the yoga of Desikachar, and discovering a whole new realm in that, which, helped me again look at how I could move and implement more compassion into my Ashtanga practice as well. And then also taking care that at times, when I lost my mum, I didn't want to practice. I was exhausted. And we get people with grief, and people say, oh, is your practice really holding you up? Is it really supporting you? It's like, I haven't been on my mat for 2 weeks, because I'm too scared to go on my mat at the moment,
Yeah. And I think that also what I consider to be practice has to do with how I'm managing my internal states and my thought patterns and my behavior patterns. So there's probably a lot of practice going on, or like things that you're drawing upon in yourself now were cultivated in practice that you've done previously,
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
And it all counts.
Yeah.
It's not like,
Yeah.
yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Well, all right. So before we talk about the transition from Ashtanga to Vinyasa Yoga, which is one that I also made.
Yes, I know.
I am curious about when teaching comes in for you. Like, how long after you get heavy into practice does teaching become a thing that you start doing too?
So interestingly, just hearing you talking in your last podcast, I feel like our stories align slightly, which is quite cool. So I started practicing yoga. It was 1996. So I was 21. And then teaching happened probably within 4 years. So I then moved into, I found a Mysore teacher. And it was just when the yoga studios were starting to rise in London. So actually Jean, who was teaching the class at the place, she said, oh, I'm starting a new class. There's a new yoga center opening up. And everyone's like, oh, wow, it's Tri Yoga. So, so Tri Yoga's opening in Primrose Hill. I've got a class there. Feel free to come and see me, so that's all cool. And then where I lived in Finsbury Park, in North London, a little space opened just around the corner from me, and it was like a shiatsu place and therapy place, but there was also yoga. So I wandered in there one day, and there was Mysore style self-practice with a woman called Abby Daniel. And so I started practicing with her very regularly, only maybe 3 days a week. And then then one day she asked me if I wanted to assist her. So I started assisting her and practicing with her, that sort of old school assistance.
That was the way it happened, yes.
Exactly. So I started assisting her and practicing. And that's where I met Norman Blair, because Abby would hold these adjustment workshops. So we would just learn how to assist and all of that. And then she said, oh, do you want to teach my Monday night beginners class? Can you cover it for me? So I did that. And then after a little while, I then just took the class on, and it was cool because then people know you've been in that class, you've been assisting, and then you take the class on. That's, as you know, that's kind of the process how it used to go.
And were you teaching primary series?
Half. It was usually half primary is where we're going. I was practicing full primary and playing with a bit of second at the time, but teaching half primary. But in terms of then teacher training, like I didn't do anything. And
your teacher training was assisting your teacher for a long while.
Yeah, exactly. And it was such a lovely relationship. It was really, really great. I had such a lovely time, and worked with some really great, beautiful fellow practitioners. It was a really lovely community there. And then I had some other classes that I started doing locally as well. I just got some insurance, third-party insurance, just went out and just did it. And then it wasn't until probably 2005, so it's about 5 years into teaching, I then thought, I think I better formalize this.
Oh, you wanted a certificate. You needed a certificate. See, but it's interesting because when in 2000, it was not as much of a thing. But in 2005, if you talked about being a yoga teacher, they would say, are you certified? Even though it didn't mean anything and it didn't actually attest to like anybody's, competency necessarily.
Absolutely.
It did become a thing. Yeah.
It did. Definitely. I completely agree. And you have people who might be qualified up to the eyeballs, but they might not be able to teach. Or have, like such a strong practice and can do really advanced asana, but they can't communicate it,
Well, just to add a side note to that, I myself was not registered with the Yoga Alliance until 2012. I opened a center in 2007. And for the first 5 years, I did start doing teacher training during that time, but I was not registered, and I would explain to everybody why I was not registered. And I basically, like on principle, was like boycotting it. But in 2012, Richard Carpel took over, and he called me and he kind of won me over. And was like, okay, I'm going to give the organization a chance. And I registered myself in 2012, and I have been registered since.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
But in similar regards to what you're saying, when I first started out, even in 2007, it wasn't as much of an issue. But in 2012, you would definitely like lose opportunities if you weren't registered.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And it's I think it's very much people want to see that stamp now. People want to see that symbol of your certification.
Yeah.
And I mean, there were things happening with Yoga Alliance in the last number of years, which I'm sure you're aware of, where
Yeah.
if you hadn't done a 500-hour qualification with them, then you couldn't be registered with them. And so you had all these people like Richard Freeman,
I know.
all these incredible teachers.
I know we've had talked about grandfathering in all these kinds of things over the years that they could have done to really not have any of these problems, but there has always been some kinds of issues there. I mean, there's some sort of newer reasons why I think there are potentially benefits to be registered, which is a different conversation. But it is interesting how there became people who got into teaching before there even really was 200, 300-hour certifications.
Yeah.
At some point, even like the Iyengar schools, they had the gold standard year-long programs, but at some point they too started doing 200-hour certifications.
Yeah. No, I totally hear you. Because when I did my teacher training, I'd never heard of the Yoga Alliance.
Yeah.
So hang on. So teacher training was 2005.
What training did you do? Who did you train?
So I did British School of Yoga.
Oh, okay, right.
Yeah.
I've had a couple people on who were part of that training. So how did you find it? What was your experience of it?
I thought it was fantastic. Well, I did it with Dave Charlton.
Oh, he was working.
Yeah. So
Cool.
When he first started teaching teacher trainings, he did them through the British Wheel before, and then when I was working with Dave, that's when he was sort of starting to pull things together with Ranju, and they were going to then start to open up their own, and then they start building their own thing. Gotcha. But at the time, when I did mine, it was 500 hours, like no less, and I loved it. It was like 1 day a month for 3 years. I'm quite a slow learner.
That's so good. That's such a better pace.
Well, that's it. And Jay, I tell you, I run teacher trainings, and the format we've been doing here, has been 200 hours, and they can be done over like 6 months.
Yeah. I made a 500-hour over a year, but you could break down like the 200-hour to 5 months and the 300 to 7 months. You could break it down like that. But
yeah.
I know what you mean. But even just like you described how you just were going to class all the time, and your teacher observed your practice, and that was like the testament to your competency. And then that teacher asked you to assist them. And that at that time, you got to observe class and what your teacher did, not from the student perspective, but from a teacher perspective. And then you taught a bunch of classes and you developed a practice of teaching, which is just it's not based in hours. Like you didn't have like an hours mark that you were trying to meet or a predetermined curriculum that you were following. It was probably much more based on your interests and what you were motivated to do on your own. Yeah,
which is it's absolutely right. Which is also how we learn. If you look at how we learn, we home educate our children, and that's basically you learn in the world. So you go out and about, you do things, you do some kind of formal stuff, but most of the time as you're out and about, you're trying to learn. That's how we learn. We only really learn stuff, only really sticks when we're interested in it.
Isn't that the truth?
It only sticks. Like you have daughters, imagine sitting and doing a subject with them, they just don't want to know about it. They're just, you're banging your head off the wall. But as soon as it's like, what do you want to do? What you're interested in, then, and that's the same for us with our practice. And because it is the gift that keeps on giving, because we're always learning. It's never going to stop with our practice and our studies, and there's always something around the corner. I'm finishing chanting training with a woman called Sheila Shankar, And that's been 3 years with Sheila. She was a Desikachar's chanting teacher. She trained with him. And I'm already lined up for my next year's course. So I'm doing a meditation training with Tara Brach and Jack Cornfield.
Okay.
Which is, again, it is like, there's always stuff, isn't there, Jay? There's always stuff you just want to just get stuck into. And it's managing the budget and the time.
It's true. And I think sometimes, some people are more inclined to benefit from like online trainings than others. I think there's been a bit of burnout too, because everything went online for that time. Yep. But I guess I'm curious in terms of, okay, so you do your British Wheel of Yoga training over 3 years. So you're teaching during that time, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so what are your gigs? You're teaching primary series? Are you teaching all over, like in a million different places and traveling all over around like I was, or what?
Well, do you know what? When you said on your last talk about teaching 20 classes a week, I was like, that was me.
You did that too.
Yes.
Did we really do that? I think about that now. It's insane. That's so many classes.
We were whippersnappers. We were young whippersnappers, Jay.
Yes, in our 20s and shit.
Yeah. But yeah, it's crazy. But I remember doing when I was doing my as part of the British Wheel training, you did throughout the course, you had to have teaching assessments. So my first teaching assessment, teacher comes in, observes you teaching, and then you go for coffee and you chat about it. And the one thing that she said that still catches me out still to this very day is I talk too fast. Okay. But the other thing is, she said to me, how many classes are you teaching a week at the moment then? And I said, 11. And she was like, 11 classes. Nadine, you've got to be really careful. You're going to get burnout. And I was thinking, I don't know how, I can't drop any classes.
No, you're just stringing it together. Did you have other gigs to pay your rent at the time, or were you stringing it?
What did I have going on? So I used to work, okay, I'm trying to just piece together my timeline in my head. So started practicing yoga. And then I started working for a florist. Okay. So I was working for a florist, and he had this guy called Tony, and he had, we did things like, we didn't work in a shop. We had like offices and restaurants and bars and things around town. And so what was quite cool was that it was a really early start, right? So I would get up and do flower market and flowers and this, that, the other. And sometimes I finished at like 2:00, I finished at 2 p.m. in Notting Hill, and I'd be like, Life Centre's around the corner. Who's teaching? Mark Hill's teaching. I'm going to go and do Mark's class. I'd always have my mat in the, I used to drive around London with my John Scott Ashtanga book on the passenger seat. And when I was sitting in traffic, I used to practice the opening and closing chant,
Nice.
Like, so it was kind of with me all the time. But so I had the gig of doing flowers and teaching at the same time. So, and then I started running my own little flower business. So, and I had a few clients, a few things I had going on. So no shop to look after or anything like that, but just sort of, I had a little van and I'd duck around town. And then that also allowed me, then I'd do flowers on a Monday, and then the rest of the week I would teach. So that helped to boost the income as well. Yeah. So that was where I was at. But then it got to a point that my moment, it got to a point, I'd met Nick, my husband, and we were really wanting to settle down, and we were thinking about starting a family. And I was like, okay, I've got to rethink about my life. What's
your freelancer gigs as a florist and a yoga teacher. Neither of them with 401ks or retirement plans or whatever, right? Or health insurance or anything. Or I don't know where you live. You get free health insurance, maybe. I don't know.
Well, yeah, but still, I know exactly the freelancer life. So it's like, what do I do? And I remember just being in the flower market one morning. It was like 4 a.m., and it was cold. And I remember looking around, and there's sort of these really old florists just looking really bitter, smoking fags with their roll up, their fingerless gloves on, just looking really pissed off.
Oh no! And then your future flashed before your eyes, and you didn't like what you saw, huh?
And then I sort of had this sort of vision of going to teach a class, and everyone's like, just feeling good in their skin, or this interacting in a really positive way. And I was like, I think I'm going to teach yoga. So I started phasing out the flowers and the yoga. I then, if so, that moment where you're like, oh, well, hang on a minute, that's so much money per month I'm going to lose. As soon as I let go of the flowers, Jay, I started getting more classes. When you let go of something, sometimes, I don't want to sound all woo-woo, but, you let go of something and then sometimes as the universe just responds.
There's like a resonance and stuff. I agree.
Yeah.
And also it was a booming time for yoga. So you caught the wave. Like I've always felt like it's interesting. For me, it was like 93, 94. It sounds like 96, 97. It did feel like New York might have been a couple years ahead of London, which was a couple years ahead of like Australia. Like there was like a cascade effect, but it's the same trajectory, it's such the same kind of thing. So I get it. You find your way into telling people you're a yoga teacher and it becoming like your full-time profession.
Yeah. And it is that kind of the idea of letting go, which is all we can really do in our yoga practice. That process of vairagya, the more we can let go of, the more we can receive. And sometimes that letting go can be so, so difficult.
All right. Yeah. So now you're a full-on yoga teacher.
20 classes a week.
That's when you
right around North
That's
London.
why you took as many classes as you could take, probably for whatever money someone was willing to give you without negotiating at all.
Yep.
And just held it down. So the 20 classes a week, like me, you travel all around and kind of managed to like probably do it for a while. It probably worked for a while.
Yeah, it was about probably the best part of 6 years that I managed to sustain that.
Yeah.
And then I got pregnant with Noah. So so 2010 we had Noah, and that was like, I have to. I knew already I was going to let go of a lot of classes because I knew that I didn't. I wanted to be around.
You can't do 20 classes and be pregnant.
No, not at all, not at all. So I started letting go of classes, and I knew that after having Noah, then I'd want to have like a lot less work to do. So I just kept a few evenings, 2 evenings I think I kept, and a weekend I think I kept, but just enough to sort of tick us over. Unfortunately, Nick was working. He works a sensible job, like 9 to 5 with the salary and stuff. So that that helped.
That alleviates the kind of anxiety when you don't have something like that. Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
All right. So how old is your son? Do you have more? Maybe you have more than one child.
Yeah, I have a daughter as well. So Noah is 13. And Hunter, my daughter, is 11.
Oh, all right. My eldest is 14 and my youngest is 10. So
cool.
We're right there. We're right there in the same life stages. I envy that you homeschooled, I must admit, because it does feel like a challenge coming up against the educational system that they're being educated in. Like we have to do a lot of work at home to counterbalance a lot of things that happen there, I feel like.
Yeah. Absolutely. And in a way, I think when we were deciding to home educate, the plan was always like, well, the kids go to school, I'll pick up a lot of daytime classes, and this is how it'll work. But then we thought, well, actually, with my kind of scheduling, I can, I teach now at the moment. I teach 3 evenings a week, and then I do a couple of online mornings from home. And that's it. And then on weekends, if I have teacher trainings running and stuff, then they get slotted in. But if it wasn't for teacher trainings, then I'd need to probably teach more classes to boost the income a little bit, But we do what we can. It's quite good having irregular hours so I can be around in the daytime.
Yes, I mean, it's such a dilemma in a way. The teacher training money versus like developing a kind of probably less but more sustainable income of like having a space or generating classes. And we can talk about that because it's become harder than ever to do that. And you heard me talking about me trying to do that now again after all these years. It's interesting to me to, I don't know, look back at these histories that we're going over your history today, because it does kind of hopefully inform what we might be trying to do now. But I guess before we talk some more about like what we're doing now and spaces, because I know you're part of a collective and some other things I'm curious to ask you about. I guess before we move on to some of that, I am curious to maybe just spend a little bit of a moment talking about like the difference between an Ashtanga practice and a Vinyasa practice. And I do that not because I want to create any kind of adversarial relationship or make camps, but because I do think that there are some very specific things about like Desikachar teachings that I haven't found in other places that have been vital to me. And I do think that it distinguishes it's an approach that's distinguishable from other approaches. And since you're someone who's studied both of them and seems like a similar jump, I'm curious from your perspective, what would you say are things that are the same about them or different about them, or how would you compare and contrast like a more traditional Ashtanga Vinyasa practice and then the kind of thing that you've studied with Dave?
Yeah. So I mean, I don't practice Ashtanga anymore. It's just not where I find my peace, really.
Right. And I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I always want to say when someone says that, you mean the series of poses, because sometimes people call Ashtanga yoga meaning like the limbs of Patanjali's Ashtanga yoga. And you sound to me like you are actually practicing an 8-limbed kind of yoga. But what you meant was you're not doing primary series like in the tradition of Patabi Joys.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think that's how Joey Miles often, I don't know if you heard of Joey Miles here in the UK, he often classes it, he'll call it the yoga of Patabi Joys, or the Ashtanga system of Patabi Joys, or Ashtanga yoga, i.e. of Patanjali. So in terms of the like a Mysore style practice, I think I've been really lucky to have teachers that have not been really, really militant. I've been very lucky to have teachers that have been like compassionate and would accept, like, if you didn't want to do something, you would just, you
didn't get sent to the back of the room. It was okay.
No, I was never a bad lady.
Yeah.
But it was just like, and I think probably in terms of personality, I'm probably on the more lazy edge. So I'm not like an A type.
Gotcha.
I'm much more kind of Kappa. So I'm a bit more on. So if I can get away without doing something,
once a month for 3 years suited you fine. You didn't do it in a month.
But so because like I'm not sort of like, oh yeah, I must get there, must get the next posture, it's just not my mindset. So then I guess I didn't push myself so hard that I was injuring myself, and I think because I'd felt so much pain and discomfort from dancing that I'd be like, I ain't doing that.
Yeah, I got you.
I ain't doing a drop back.
Yeah, and that's it. Even what you say there is so significant, even within the Ashtanga system or whatever. If that teacher held a sensibility where they weren't going to impose something on you and that it was perfectly okay for you to be like, no, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
And you weren't shamed or made to feel in a crappy way because of making that choice. In fact, I think a good teacher would really respect and honor someone making that choice, hopefully.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's become quite a hot topic these days, especially, with the ideas of consent. And that's, and assists. And everything kicked off, in the Ashtanga realm with Matthew Remsky's book and, a lot of the whole Me Too movement. Then that there has been such a huge wave here, especially in Edinburgh, actually, a lot of discussion around consent. And always asking before you touch somebody, even if they said yes for one asana, you go back to do Paschimottanasana. It's like, you okay?
There's a lot of debates. But interesting to note, I heard that actually, if you go to the new Shala of Sharat, the Ashtanga, they do have flip chips. Like, you don't have to use them, but you can use them if you want. which never was the case in the past. That's for sure.
I know. Yeah, absolutely. So I think that's really important. But I do feel, to come back around to your question, I do feel that I have been lucky to have teachers that have, accepted that it's, I'll take it to a certain level and that's it. So then when I started meeting the Vini Yoga style, when I started working with Dave, the only yoga I'd ever done was Ashtanga Vinyasa. And I touched on a little bit of philosophy, but I really got stuck into philosophy. Oops, sorry, I'm just knocking things over here. I really got stuck into philosophy with Dave, and that's where I started to really understand, the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, and we did lots and lots of study around that.
If you are hearing this message, then you're listening to the free version of J. Brown Yoga Talks. To hear the rest of our conversation, please subscribe to Podcast Premium at jbrownyoga.com/premium.